Today we are solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula says if ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, then x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, I know that looks complicated and like a lot, but we will break it down and we will evaluate each piece one at a time. So the order that you want to evaluate that in, first of all, you want to make sure your equation that you're starting with is in standard form. So that means you've got your x squared term, your x term, and your constant on the left, and it is equal to 0. From there, you can identify your a, b, and c, and you can plug them into your formula. Evaluate the b squared and the 2a first. Some people like to just evaluate b squared right away when they plug it in and 2a right away when they plug it in. Next, you'll evaluate the 4ac. Then you'll do the subtraction under the square root. And then you separate that into two separate expressions and evaluate because we do have the plus or minus. So there's really two different answers there. Just kind of scrunch it together. You can use your calculator to help you, especially with that b squared minus 4ac part. I recommend typing it into your calculator. All right, so let's take a look at example 1. We've got a quadratic equation that is already equal to 0, so it's already in standard form. So a is 2, b is 7, c is 6. Our formula over here for reference, opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So as I said, a is 2, the number in front of x squared, b is 7, the number in front of x, and c is 6. Substituting in those three numbers, it looks like this. X equals -7 plus or minus the square root of 7 squared minus 4 times 2 times 6. So under the square root, we would evaluate 7 squared first, and then the fraction bar is like a grouping symbol, so we evaluate the denominator on its own. Okay, so 7 squared became 49. The 2 times 2 becomes 4. Next, we do the multiplying under the square root, so 4 times 2 gives us 8, times 6 gives us 48. Next is our subtraction. 49 minus 48 gives us 1. So we have plus the square root of 1 and also minus the square root of 1. So from there, we can split that up into two separate expressions. The square root of 1 is 1. All right, so we have -7 plus 1 all over 4, -7 minus 1 all over 4. -7 plus 1 gives us -6, and -6 over 4 can be reduced to -3/2. And then the next one, -7 minus 1 gives us -8. -8 over 4 gives us -2. So I'm going to write my two answers in set notation. They are -2 and -3/2. If I graph that, y equals 2x squared plus 7x plus 6, so that original equation that was set equal to 0, I get this parabola here. We can see the x-intercepts are -2, 0, and -1.50. So notice our answers were -2 and -3/2, which does equal -1.5. So this graph does confirm our answer, because if you go back here, it's when it equals 0. When something equals 0 is when it's crossing the x-axis, when the y value is 0. So just to reiterate, we can graph it and look at where the x-intercepts are to make sure we have the correct answer. Let's try this again. Number 2, it's already in standard form for us. So a is 2, b is 5, c is -6. Substituting the three numbers into our formula, we have x equals -5 plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times 2 times -6. So I like to use my calculator and I type in all of the b squared minus 4ac all at once. I'm just would type that all in all at once. And please do put parentheses around b, especially if you're substituting in a negative number for b. Otherwise, you're not going to get the correct answer from your calculator. So after I type that in and press enter, the calculator gives me 73. And then we get -5 plus the square root of 73. And the square root of 73 is an irrational number. I can't simplify that like I could simplify the square root of 1 equaling 1. So we just get two irrational answers here. And then we can type them into our calculator to get the rounded answers of x is approximately 0.89 or -3.39. Number 3, we need to first get this equation into standard form. So I'm going to subtract 15x from both sides because remember we want it to equal 0. So now um, realize that there's an understood 1 in front of the x squared. So a is 1, b is -15, and x is 8. So in our formula, it says opposite of b. So the opposite of -15 is +15. All right, and then we get +15 plus or minus the square root of -15 squared minus 4 times 1 times 8. Okay, please type in that b squared minus 4ac to your calculator. So we're going to make it do all of the work that's under the square root. We're going to make it do all of that for us. It is very important that that -15 is in parentheses. If you do not type it into parentheses, you will get the wrong answer. So the calculator does that number crunching for us and we get 193. So we have 15 plus or minus the square root of 193 all over 2. 193 is not a perfect square, so I cannot simplify that. I would just round it by typing the number into my calculator. I would do 15 plus the square root of 193 divided by 2, and then taking 15 minus the square root of 193 and dividing by 2 to get the two separate answers. Thank you for watching.